This is gut health. This is exciting stuff. Okay, we're gonna start off with a testimony video that I think is very powerful. Daryl, you may know this young person here.
Hi, I'm Asher and I'm 5.5 years old.
The reason that we started coming to Empower is because Asher was severely constipated and going to the bathroom about every 4 to 5 days. And then when he would go, it took at least 20 minutes of him sitting there crying and screaming that how much pain he was in. And then after 1 to 2 weeks of coming here, he now goes to the bathroom about every 3 days, and he says he has to go pee, sits on the potty, and then in about 1 minute, it's out. And he said, oh, I pooped. I thought I had to pee. I thought I just had to pee, but I actually had to poop. With no feeling, like no bad negative feeling. Doesn't even hurt. Super easy. So we are so thankful.
So that's Asher's story, and here's what's really cool. When I first met him and I first met his parents, and they started talking about his story, there's always a confusion when somebody has something that's not a typical chiropractic thing, like headaches or back pain. When someone says, "Hey, I'm constipated," and I say, "Hey, a chiropractic adjustment's going to help that," everyone's brain goes, "How does that work?" Does that make sense? And here's what I'm going to talk more about that later tonight. But here's the power. Everyone tonight, there are some of you guys that are here tonight, and you're here because you know you have some level of gut dysfunction, and you're like, I'm here for some answers, and I want to figure that out, right? And then there's other people, you're here tonight because you're like, I'm supporting the person with the gut problem, so I'm just here to be the support person, right? Regardless, here's what's really interesting. As we were talking about this leading up, you almost can't live in America and be on the spectrum of gut health to some degree. Does that make sense? With the overload of bad foods and toxicity and just the abundance of problems we have in our country today, everyone to some level has some form of gut dysfunction. The problem is that we only associate gut dysfunction with gut things. And what you're going to learn tonight that's going to make your mind go boom is going to be how there's so many more other things that are connected to our gut that we might be unaware of. So what I'm praying for tonight is not just good information. I'm praying that there's a revelation that happens tonight. And here's why I say that. When we have information, we really don't do anything with information. When we have a revelation, there's a move that happens with that. Does that make sense? Tonight, I want you to make a move with this. Don't come tonight, spend tonight with me, and then go home and go, that was fun. Like, use tonight to put into action, okay? So, as we get in, there's going to be two things that we're going to refer to quite a bit. The belly bundle and then the actual gut testing. So here's the basis. So when we reference belly bundle, this is more of like a 2-month generic gut cleanse that is good for most people that have a mild form of some level of gut dysfunction, okay? The gut test, I don't think is for everybody, but the gut test is for people who say, I know I have a significant gut dysfunction and I want to know exactly what it is so I can find out exactly how to correct it. Does that make sense there? So when we go through, we'll kind of let people know, but I want you to think about as we go through tonight, what's the action step that I need to take leaving tonight? Is it a gut test? Is it a belly bundle? And then, or is it some of the other amazing things that we're gonna like hit tonight? But make sure that there is some form of an action step that we take tonight. Just so everybody knows, tonight there are people, I know who you are, by the way. You come because you know that at workshops we do discounts on our supplements and you're here for that. That's okay. I'm not judging you. That's okay. So tonight, our supplements, whenever we do a workshop, we do 15% off all of our stuff back there. And then these two guys here are going to be 20% off as we go through that. So keep that in mind. All right, as we dive in, here's where we talk about this. Hippocrates said, all disease begins where?
In the gut.
In the gut. Here's what you have to realize. This blew me away. Hippocrates, for those of you guys need a history lesson, Hippocrates was walking the earth before Jesus was walking the earth. This is a long time ago. And back then, he made a couple bold statements about health. One of these was that he knew there was some level of that diseases was founded and stored and connected to your gut. I thought that was so prophetic to happen that long ago. And now we have the science to back up everything that he was saying. So when you start thinking about everything and how is the gut interconnected and how is it that all this is happening, you guys may have heard this connection that they call the gut, your second brain. And Dr. Olivia is going to get into this amazing connection between your gut and your brain. But the big picture is that when you have so many different things the gut is controlling, that becomes dysfunctional. You're going to see disease root out from so many different platforms and areas. And this is kind of how this connects, okay? So when you start looking from here, I think a good place to help people understand is where we start. So when we look at the gut itself, the gut is, I call it from root to shoot. So from root to shoot, just to give you guys know, this is what I think is just an amazing awe of God's design, because that's basically your esophagus coming down. But like, think about from here to here is basically all of our gut or GI system that comes out. The average GI system is 30 feet long. That, for most, just to give you guys, that's like the average length of a school bus. So if you took your entire GI tract and stretched it out, it's the entire length of a school bus. And somehow we mesh it all into this little pocket right here and make sure that everything that you put in your mouth, right? Your GI system's job is to take the nourishment in, it's to break it down effectively along the way. So along this pathway, each part of your GI system is responsible for breaking down different things, assimilating it and absorbing it into the body at different stages, so you get the benefit of the nourishment that you're putting in. Does that make sense? And then it excretes whatever is not needed. So that's what it does. And I always find it fascinating because the way I grew up, I put a lot of things that were not real food in my body, a lot of processed, horrible things, and somehow it found a way to find some level of nourishment from it. I don't know, there's not a whole lot of nourishment in a hot Cheeto, but my body found a way to make it work. So when you look at the body and its design, it's incredible how it works. But think about everything going in. That's the process your body's trying to filter through all the way through. And again, it's all coiled up. Like, we were using our hose the other day to water the plants, and it was all tangled up and it was all bundled up. And my son's like, "Daddy, you got to stretch it out to unwind it. Otherwise the water can't go through." And I said, "Hey, this is what happens in here. Sometimes when our gut gets so inflamed, it gets knotted. And when it gets knotted and inflamed, stuff can't pass through as effectively as it should." So think about, we're going to touch more on this in a minute, but when we have an inflamed GI tract and that bundles things up, you don't get things passing through your gut as efficiently as it should. And this is where we get fermentation or bloating or gassy, or in babies, you see it colic, right? It forms in all different fashions. But that's a big thing, is when we're not inflamed, everything that's supposed to be here can do its job the way that God intended. Amen? Amen. Woo. Just kidding. Okay, that whole thing, you may have heard this fancy word, microbiome. This is getting like tossed around a bunch of places. I want to bring some clarity a little bit. So your microbiome, believe it or not, is not just in your gut. Your microbiome also encompasses your skin. It also encompasses every entrance, we'll say, to the body, every hole that enters the body. That's a part of your microbiome, because again, you have different pathogens and different microbes that live all over the place. And all of that, your inside, your outside, all of this is making up your microbiome. Here's what's so fascinating. The microbiome is made of primarily bacteria, viruses, and fungi, a couple other things, but primarily those three things. Here's a fun fact. The number of cells that make up the human body is 30 trillion. So think about that for a second. 30 trillion cells make up our body, okay? Do you know how many bacteria, viruses, and fungi make up the microbiome? 100 trillion. 100 trillion bacteria, viruses are living on and in your body. And here's why I share this. When we typically just throw out the word bacteria and virus, we associate that with the good or a bad thing. What was that? Bad thing, yes, because the moment you say virus, bacteria, we go antibiotic, kill it. You need like hand sanitizer, like we got to get rid of it. We always think it's a bad thing. The reality is that we are at some level of an ecosystem, and the body needs to have a balance of both of these things to be in a healthy state. So if we just go around killing every bit of virus or bacteria that we have in our body, we're neutralizing ourselves over, and now our body becomes out of balance. Does that make sense? So we need to have a healthy balance of this. This is why they've done studies a long time ago, but this is why you see this where kids that are typically raised and grown up out in like a farmland who are exposed to everything have much more diverse microbiomes because they're exposed to stuff. When we shelter kids inside and we lather them in Purell, like they're not exposed to anything and their microbiome is so underbalanced and so underdeveloped. So we want to make sure that we're building in a healthy way a good microbiome. And you'll, again, as we go in a minute, you're going to see all the different pieces that connect and why that's so important. So far, so good? Okay. Where does the microbiome begin? Where do we begin to start to build the microbiome? And it happens right at birth. This is what's so neat. As I was studying this, I actually didn't know this before tonight, but their giving birth, is called the baptism of bacteria. Repeat that, the baptism of bacteria. And here's why that's said. When a baby is born, the baby technically does not really have a microbiome. So there's two main ways that a baby gets the microbiome formed in their body. Number one is as they come out the vaginal canal, they get a lot of mom's microbiome as they come out that canal. That's number one. Very, very important part of if a woman is able to deliver vaginally, the very important piece of that. Part two is that when they breastfeed, breastfeeding is another very important part of helping to build and create the microbiome. So this is why if you have to have a C-section, I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget, they call this vaginal seeding. Because they know how important it is, if you have to have a C-section, you can do a process called vaginal seeding where they will basically scope some of the bacteria and they'll help get baby basically connected so that that way there's still some level that can happen. So I always encourage moms like, hey, if that happens, like it's okay. There are other ways we can help baby to still have access, right? Again, nursing, if you can, really, really helpful to help build that microbiome in the baby. But those are really, really important pieces of why we need to start that way. Otherwise, we're kind of starting with an empty slate. And then you see a lot of kids, when they don't have that, you start to see a pattern of them just getting sick a lot more frequently. And it's because they don't have the defenses built up because their walls never got put up. It makes sense? So now what's interesting is you go from here. So baby gets born. The question is, what's typically the first thing that's going to mess up or negatively impact our microbiome or the gut of a baby? We're going to start young and then we're going to get as we go older. What's the first thing that typically messes that up? Does anybody know? Yeah, well, yeah. So vaccines is one. Yes, you're not wrong. Um, Antibiotics is the most common first thing, and here's why I bring up antibiotics first. Is it up here? Yeah. Do you guys know what's the average age a baby is first introduced to an antibiotic? How soon? 1 year. It's about 30 minutes. So most babies, when they're born today, they get erythromycin cream gel rubbed on their eyes. And that's a process that happens all across the board in hospitals. And it's an antibiotic cream that they rub in babies' eyes. And the purpose of that is that just in case mom had gonorrhea, we want to make sure that the baby is taken care of. Do I have permission real quick to speak freely tonight? Do I have your guys' permission? Is that okay? Okay, I'm in the right place. Okay. There's no holding back tonight. Here's the reality. If you go through the process as a pregnant mom, most likely you're tested to make sure that you don't have that. So the fact that they do that regardless is not okay. So you have to be careful because they're going to it's just a thing that they do. And it's so common that even if you say we don't want that, they just do it really quick because they don't even it's just what happens. But that right there is the first time your baby's experiencing an antibiotic minutes old. And then if you go statistically to actual like pill form or liquid form of antibiotic, 70% of kids before the age of 2 years old in our country will have at least one round of antibiotics. 70% of kids before the age of 2. Now, here's some side effects. We call these the 3 A's: autism, ADHD, and allergies. Oh, sorry, asthma. There's the fourth. So when you look at these A's, these are really common A's that we see. And when you see antibiotics given and you're decreasing the health of the microbiome, this is a really big thing. So the problem with an antibiotic, when you give somebody an antibiotic, whether you know it or not, that antibiotic is basically like dropping an atomic bomb into a city and clearing house. Like it doesn't, it's like good guys, bad guys, we're taking everybody out. So the antibiotic going in basically wipes your gut out. So the goal would be, number one, let's help people to never need to go on an antibiotic. However, if there is a time when you do need to have a round of antibiotics, building your gut back up appropriately is really, really important. So if you've been here long enough with me and if you've ever had to be on one, I've been on you to say, hey, let's make sure we rebuild that really quickly. Because again, you see round and round and round happen. And then all of a sudden now baby goes on. And then you see this pattern happen where the baby gets an antibiotic, baby gets sick. Oh, another antibiotic, baby gets sick. And you see these patterns that keep looping. It's because we're not ever fixing the gut. So here's what's interesting. What's the most common reason a baby goes on an antibiotic? Ear infections. But what's the actual cause of most ear infections? It's actually a misalignment of their spine. When the top bone rotates out of position, that bone getting rotated out of alignment blocks the fluid that's supposed to flush in and out of your baby's ear, and it backs up into the ear canal, creating the ear infection. This is why parents, when they bring kids with ear infections in chronically, 1 or 2 adjustments, and all of a sudden the ear infections go away. We've had kids multiple times come in that were scheduled to have tubes in their ears. They start getting adjusted, tubes canceled. Like, I don't think we've ever had a kid in the history of this 8, 7 years that we've ever had a kid come in scheduled for tubes and still have to have the tubes. Because when you get to the root cause of what's wrong, the body starts to heal and does its thing. So again, if we're taking care of the body from the inside out the right way, you avoid a lot of these other issues. Now this goes into even, again, adults. When we take antibiotics, it's doing a similar thing for us. So we got to say, hey, what's actually the root cause of why my body got that thing in the first place? And can I address that first? You guys with me? So addressing the thing first, super, super important. Okay, good. Didn't miss anything. Now, I keep repeating that when we get the antibiotic, we get sick. When the gut gets messed up, we get sick. Why is it that we get sick when we have a messed up gut? It's because there is 70% of your immune system living in your gut. So when you talk about how do we have a healthy immune system, 70% of that is in your gut. So if we have an unhealthy, unbalanced, or dysfunctional gut, what kind of immune system are we going to have? Not good. No good. So the reality is that this is why having a really healthy gut is literally the foundation of us having a strong immune system. When it comes time for the holidays, I promise you, I will say this again, but when the holidays come around, why do you think we have so many more people getting sick during the holidays? It's because we damage our gut. We start eating all the sugar, we start eating all the processed stuff, we do all kinds of things that are not good to our gut, and our immune system goes woo, and then all of a sudden we get sick again. Here's why. So taking care of your gut. In fact, I have a story of a guy who came in and he was just like chronically getting sick. And he's chronically getting sick and he's like, I think I just don't have a good immune system. I was like, I don't think that's a thing. I think that like there's a reason where the immune system lives and maybe that's just not healthy. Let's figure out how to build that back up. So we started talking and I said, hey, 70% in your gut. Have you ever done a gut test? He's like, why would I do that? I said, well, let's look at your gut. We start doing a gut test with him, find out he had all kinds of markers. So the gut test I was just talking about, he did that. We find all these markers that were off in his gut. And I was like, that probably makes sense. Put him through a gut protocol to re-heal his gut. And like no longer is he getting these repeat sicknesses. So again, you go back to the case of like, as we go down, like what is the underlying root cause of the thing? And we want to heal the thing from the beginning. Otherwise we're caught chasing symptoms left and right, but we have to start. This is such a dynamic place to start. Now, here's where, knowing that this is such a connected place, the question you have to ask yourself is, what you put in your mouth or what you put in your gut starting in the beginning of life how you introduce and what you introduce, again, is going to create or begin the foundation of how healthy or unhealthy the gut's going to be. Does that make sense? Which leads to this.
Okay, so Dr. Mike mentioned how breastfeeding is a great way to proactively lay the foundation for babies' gut microbiome and their immune system. And the reason why, what he was getting at, is when babies are eating, there's an interaction that happens between baby's saliva and the mom's body that she can literally on the spot produce antibodies and immune boosting components for any illness or sickness that's present at that time. I think that's
How cool
pretty
is that?
awesome that God made our bodies that way,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
And like he was saying too, there's other bioactive factors that promote that healthy, natural gut flora. It's like a natural probiotic for babies. So that's why it's so important when you can to breastfeed babies from the beginning. And right now, only about 26% of babies in the US are exclusively breastfed by 6 months old. And that can be for a lot of reasons, and so that's not to shame anyone who's not able to. There are lots of different reasons, but I think it's important to know, like, when you compare even the best formula with the cleanest ingredients, it can't do that, right? It can't tailor to that individual baby's nutritional needs, and that's just really cool. When we're talking about setting up kids for a good future and a good gut as they go throughout their life, what we have to do is look at what first foods are we giving them, because every bite counts with this. We have an opportunity to choose which microbes flourish in the gut and which do not. And so we want to focus on high nutrient density foods and not waste it on those low nutrient density foods. One of the most common mistakes that we make with babies is introducing them to salads too early. If you guys know, like, when you feed a baby their first bite of, usually it's the rice cereal, what do? Spit it out, gag on it, right? And then you're like scooping it off their face, putting it back in their mouth. That's usually a sign that baby might not be ready for solid foods, and that's okay. There is a saying that goes, food before one is just for fun. So babies actually don't need solid foods before a year old. If they show interest and they want to eat them, that's okay. But if they don't, that's also okay. We actually don't have enzymes in our gut to digest food until 6 months old. And our digestive system isn't fully developed till about 3 years old. So when we introduce these, especially like rice cereal in bottles is a common thing to help babies sleep longer. If that is introduced before 6 months old, that can cause a lot of chronic damage to the gut, allergies, asthma, even chronic issues like obesity later in life. And so that's really, really important to make sure we're waiting until they're ready. They'll innately tell you when they're ready. And then the other thing we want to look at with rice cereal and baby food, these foods offer very little nutritional value, and they're usually high in heavy metals. So the FDA does not regulate very many heavy metals. This is often left up to the specific brands to self-regulate. I don't know about you guys, but there's not very many brands I would trust to self-regulate the ingredients that they're putting into things. And so right now, as of April of this year, there are lawsuits against Good and Gather, Walmart, Beechnut, and Gerber for toxic heavy metals in their baby foods. And this month, in June of 2025, a new report came out from Healthy Babies Bright Futures where they found arsenic. So they tested 145 different types of rice. 100% of them had arsenic in them. And this is regular rice, but rice is used to make that rice cereal. And more than 1 in 4 of those samples were above that FDA safety limit for infant rice cereal. So what happens when babies are exposed to these heavy metals is these are neurotoxins. And so they get into the brains, and this is where you see things like ADD, lower IQ scores later in life as well. So we want to focus on gut healthy first foods. And if you guys notice, the same concept applies here as anytime we talk about nutrition. It's God-made food versus man-made food. So we want to focus on good God-made foods because these already have the nutrients that babies need, rather than taking something that is man-made and then having to add in those synthetic nutrients to make it healthy for baby. So avocado is a great first food. It's a good source of healthy fats. And then you have sweet potato and berries. These are great for fiber and antioxidants. All of these help to support, again, that immune system, microbiome, and even brain development. Your meat, eggs, and dairy. So animal proteins are really important because of the iron content. So iron is really important for brain development. And there's a difference between iron that you find in animal products and iron that you find in plant products, which is what they fortify things with. So anything that's fortified with iron is a non-heme version of iron. That's actually really hard for our body to absorb. We have to convert that into the animal form, the heme iron. So what they found is, I wrote this down. So when you have unabsorbed iron in your gut, which is when it's being converted, that can lead to a decrease in good bacteria and possibly even increase the harmful bacteria like E. coli. And there was a recent study that showed that babies who consumed beef as a first food saw no decline in good bacteria, actually saw a greater richness in good bacteria after 4 weeks compared to babies eating iron fortified cereal. So these are super important for getting that good natural form of iron and zinc as well. And then sauerkraut and fermented foods. I know it's weird. It doesn't seem like you should give babies sauerkraut, but they love it. And it's a good natural probiotic containing food. Okay, I want you guys to all think about the last time you had a stomach ache, or your kid had a stomach ache, or your spouse had a stomach ache, and they were probably just making a big deal about it, being super dramatic. Maybe I'm just speaking from
She's so
my own
empathetic.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
like get over it. So think about, what was your initial remedy? So in those situations, your paradigm and your belief system when it comes to health is going to dictate what your remedy is. So if you're someone who believes symptoms are something that we need to get rid of, cover up, just push them away, you'll reach for the meds and how can I get rid of these symptoms and stop them. But if you're someone who knows that symptoms are your body's way of pointing to an underlying cause, you're going to look for, well, what's going on that's actually causing this stomach issue and how can I fix that so that I'm not always covering up these symptoms. So one of those typical initial remedies would be your antacids. So here's what happens when we take an antacid. We're usually prescribed these or we take these because we think I have too much acid in my stomach, and so that's what's causing it to back up and giving me that chest pain and heartburn. Here's what we don't realize is when we take these to neutralize the acid, that is a problem because it does change the pH in your stomach acid. Here's why that's a problem. Your stomach acid wasn't created to be neutralized. It was created to be strongly acidic so that it can break down your food. And so when we're messing with that pH, it actually interferes with proper food breakdown. When you have prolonged use of antacids, what happens is you actually see a decrease in the amount of stomach acid produced. And here's why this is a problem. One, you have B vitamin deficiency. So stomach acid is needed for the absorption of vitamin B12. So if you're not absorbing that, you'll find yourself deficient in it. And B12 deficiency leads to central nervous system problems. So you'll have fatigue, weakness, memory problems, neurological issues, dementia, all these kinds of things. The second problem is, like I said, less stomach acid equals slower digestion and slower breakdown of food. And so when you have food that's sitting in the GI tract, what does that do? It causes things to back up and you get reflux, right? So reflux is when you have that stomach acid that backs up into your esophagus. Like Dr. Mike was saying, it's the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. When these acidic contents back up, it irritates that lining, and that's when you feel that heartburn, reflux, chest pain, all of those things, which leads to then taking more antacids, which leads to less stomach acid. You can see how this becomes a cycle that we can get caught in. Speaking of that, this is Dawn. Dawn's here tonight. Give it up for Dawn. So, Dawn came to our Pure Energy seminar back in February, and he did our 30-day health challenge with us. Who of you guys have been to our big seminars and done a challenge with us? Like
There we go.
two of you? Okay.
Okay,
You
so
guys all
next
better be there next
February,
time.
awesome.
You're all signing up for the
That's
challenge.
right.
Okay. So Don did that and dove in, started changing nutrition, started exercising, and he started taking the Foundational 3 supplement bundle that we actually launched that day. Before that day, Don was taking Tums at least once a day, and he was waking up with severe reflux sweat, like almost every night, right? Like choking on acid, just a lot of pain. What he noticed was as he started in this process, he's like, oh, I'm taking less and less Tums. I don't need these as much. Fast forward to about a month ago, he started finally getting adjusted here. And
boy.
he's been getting adjusted for about a month, and he has not needed to take Tums since then, right? Over 2 months now. See,
Come
even
on.
better. So I just share that with you guys to say, be like Don. Know that you,
Yeah.
how do I be more like
Write
Don?
that down. Be like Don. That's right.
Yes. Because like know that you have something that needs fixed and take action and dive all in, get your supplements, do what you need to do and be proactive. And then you can also have a cool testimony like that. And now he's free from needing that and you won't have dementia later. That's great.
Amen, Don.
That's great. Yes. Okay, so here are some natural solutions for you when you are dealing with some GI discomfort. So apple cider vinegar is a great way to help production of your stomach acid and help break things down. I'm going to tell you this now. Everybody write this down so don't come at me later. Dilute it when you take it, okay? I thought it was going to be really cool. I was going to make this video of me taking my apple cider vinegar before I eat. And I was like, I'm just going to do it without water and I'm just going to show how strong I am. I almost died. I like couldn't breathe. I was choking.
So funny.
If you ask really nicely, I'll show you the video. It was really
It's so
bad.
funny.
So make sure you do your tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, add some water, please. If you don't come at me later and tell me that I tried to kill you. Or you can take your digestive enzymes. It's way easier. So these are our digestive enzymes, the GI Replace. I take these before every meal. I've noticed a huge difference since starting that. What I like about ours and what's in them is betaine HCl is one of the main ingredients. This is a main ingredient in your stomach acid. So it literally helps to produce enough stomach acid and support that pH. There's also oxbile and lipase, which those mean nothing to you, but what they do is they support your gallbladder. And your gallbladder breaks down fats. So this helps you to break down fats better. And then also supports your pancreatic enzymes, which break down everything. Dr. Mike is going to talk more about the carnivore diet later, but I put that up there because I just want to point out that you can't out-supplement a crappy diet. So if you keep taking your digestive enzymes, but you're still eating the fried food and the sugar, you're basically just putting a little Band-Aid on a gaping wound. You're not fixing anything. And so we have to remove the things that are repeatedly causing the dysfunction and take those supportive things to help with healing.
Okay. We just need 2 clickers that we need.
I know.
So symptoms of poor gut health, these are the things that most people would, again, resonate with. Upset stomach, bloating, fatigue. I highlighted sleep and skin. And I highlighted those 2 because those are 2 ones that I feel like most people would probably not connect to a gut issue. So sleep specifically, I'm going to talk about this. So with your sleep, I didn't know this actually prior to tonight, but did you know that your gut has its own circadian rhythm? That's a fascinating thing. So part of our circadian rhythm is housed in our gut, and that helps our body understand when and how we should start processing melatonin and how we should be sleeping. And the reason why that's the case is because melatonin is what goes up at night and what helps our body start to wind down for bed, right? Your body needs serotonin to make melatonin. These all rhyme. I know it's kind of confusing. Your body needs serotonin to make melatonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone. That's our joy. That's our exciting. We feel good, right? 90% of our serotonin lives in your gut. So if we need serotonin to make melatonin so that you can go to sleep at night, that starts in the gut. Does that make sense? What I try to make sure that follow me there. The other part that's really interesting is you having bad sleep can actually go backwards and create a dysfunctional gut. So it goes the opposite, meaning if you're not having enough sleep and you are sleep deprived, your cortisol levels go up. If you have prolonged increased cortisol, that inflames your gut lining. Prolonged inflammation to the gut lining creates something called leaky gut. Not a good thing. I'm going to talk about leaky gut in a minute. But prolonged sleep deprivation creates something like leaky gut. So you can see that they go both ways, where sleep and gut go hand in hand. So I experienced this when I had our newborn. I was not sleeping and I was like very deprived and I felt the cortisol up and I was like, oh man, my gut is not what it used to be. So I had to be way more intentional to help myself get through that. So that's one big thing. The other one is skin. You guys know that your skin is one of your biggest detoxifying organs that we have? And what's interesting is a lot of times if you get like a rash on your skin, right? Most times people would say, oh my gosh, you must have ate something that you had a reaction to, because we know that your body's trying to excrete whatever that was and it's coming out through the skin. So there's a big connection between your gut and your skin. So if somebody has skin issues, whether that's dry skin, eczema, if you have rashes that pop up, like there's something that's not right with your gut that we need to look at. We don't need to just lather in steroid creams. That's not the solution. There's got to be an underlying issue with our gut to help us to figure out what's going on down at the deep level. And we've seen this with, you see it with a lot of kids, but even adults, right? When we have these things, for me specifically, I have an allergy to dairy. Found that out by doing some testing, but I'm Italian. I grew up eating dairy. Dairy is like the only thing in my diet. So when I was growing up, I was like, man, I just have bad skin and I have all these rashes. I'm always itchy and we just didn't know what to do with it. Once I found that out, I was like, oh my gosh, now I put two and two together. Whenever I eat dairy, I get a really bad rash and my skin gets like leathery and I start itching because my body's reacting to the dairy. If I take that out and keep it out, no issues. So pay attention, use your skin as a way of saying, hey, if I ate something and I'm getting a response, like your body's telling you something. It's always talking to you. Listen to what your body's trying to tell you through the skin, okay? Now, there's a concept called, well, we'll go through a couple different digestive disorders that are very common. Dysbiosis is like, I think, the foundation. So here's what I mean by that. Dysbiosis is a term that you'll hear a lot. What that basically means is this. Remember all the 100 trillion different bacteria we have in our body? There should be, remember I said, a healthy balance of all of them, the good and the bad. You want a healthy balance there. Dysbiosis, at a simplest explanation, is when you have a unbalanced good versus bad. When they are not in unison, you have dysbiosis, okay? So if you have too much of the bad guys, not enough of the good guys, that in itself is called dysbiosis. Here's why this is crazy. We talked earlier about different symptoms that you would not necessarily connect to gut issues. Having dysbiosis, meaning unbalanced bacteria, autoimmune conditions, diabetes, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, aka high blood pressure. There is an article that came out that actually linked gut dysbiosis or imbalance of gut bacteria to high blood pressure. Here's why I'm highlighting this. How many times when we go to the doctor and we have high blood pressure, how many times your doctor say, you have hypertension, we should check your gut bacteria? Never. This is the problem, is that there are so many multiple ways that somebody could have a reason why they could have hypertension. A pill is not the solution. We got to get away from, not yelling at you guys. Culturally, we got to get away from that. That's not the solution. There's multiple things. And again, study after study is now showing that your gut could be related to the reason why you have high blood pressure. So here's why I think when we encourage people to say, if you've never done a gut test, I think it's fascinating to have a gut test to just see what is going on, where am I? And one of my mentors a long time ago, I remember he said this and I never forgot it, but he goes, when would be the best time to get testing done? When you get the diagnosis or before you have the diagnosis? I'm assuming you guys are saying before. Before the diagnosis. The reality is like this. If we can do a test to say, hey, you're on the path to getting X thing, let's make some changes so you don't ever end up getting the blank diagnosis. That makes way more sense. So in our culture, we talk about preventative care. We talk about being proactive with our care. this is part of that. So like, I haven't been to a doctor since probably I was 18 years old. And the reality is like people go, well, how do you get checkups and how do you know if you're healthy? I'm like, well, every year I x-ray my spine to make sure my spine is in alignment and my body is healthy here. Once every year or every other year, I get a full gut panel to make sure is my gut healthy. Once a year, I get a full blood panel to say, is everything like tracking where it's supposed to be? So I'm functionally testing my body to make sure is everything working the way it's supposed to be from the inside out. Does that make sense? Now, this is where I think, again, it's so important to say, knowing how much the gut controls. If you've never had a gut test, I think it's really awesome to say, hey, where am I? Do you know what I mean? It's a good breakdown. Now, I'll just tell my story real quick here. The reason we even have this whole program we do in the office is because of me. It's because I had some gut issues where I was having a whole bunch of problems and I was eating meat and veggies and I felt pregnant every night. I felt bloated. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm eating clean. This shouldn't be happening. And I was all frustrated. And then I remember thinking, like, okay, there's got to be something wrong. And I talked to some friends in Max Living and they said, you got to do a gut test. I said, great, give me the gut test. I did this test and I had so many markers that were off in my gut that I was so shocked because I thought that I lived a really healthy life. And I did for the last 10 years. But for the last 20 years, it was really bad. So for the last 20 years, I had created this monster in my gut, right, that needed to be corrected. So once I started to do this program that Dr. Lewis will talk about later, once I did this program and I actually like went through a process to fix what was wrong, I'm like, hey, I can eat a piece of broccoli and not want to throw up. This is great. So as you go through, there's got to be something in there, that we want to figure out. Now, when I originally built this slide, I originally called this hormone, like hormone imbalances, but I moved it to depression, anxiety because um, hormones are affected with your gut. We talked about serotonin as a hormone that's in your gut. But I think when we start looking at the amount of anxiety and depression we have as a culture right now, it's pretty staggering when you hear the numbers. So I want to share a couple of these. So this is as of 2024. 1 in 10 people are now taking a psychiatric drug of some kind. Women in their 40s and 50s, 1 out of 4 take an antidepressant. 30, this is the big one. 30 million Americans were prescribed $12 billion worth of antidepressants last year. Soak that in for a second. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that it's not a real thing, but I'm saying is that we're not addressing it the right way. You guys with me on that? We're not addressing this the right way. I think there's a lot of people in our country that have a significant problem and they need the correct help. They need the right help to make sure that we're addressing this thing where it belongs. And when you start to look at this, SSRIs are typically the medication that you give somebody who's depressed. When you start looking at SSRIs, they're artificially altering, it's a funny word, the neurotransmitters that try to communicate to your brain to tell your body how to understand. So if I'm taking this medication, my body doesn't think I need to make serotonin anymore, so it's going to stop producing serotonin. If you artificially give your body something, it doesn't see the need to continue making it, it will stop producing it. So if you have someone that's on an anxiety or depression medicine for a long time, their body will have a very hard time making that hormone. And that works in other, if you're looking at hormones, that works with testosterone and progesterone and different things. If you're artificially giving it, your body will have a hard time making it on its own. Does that make sense? So we got to make sure we're addressing things the correct way so your body knows and understands how to continue building things the right way. So one more thing I'll share with this is that they've done studies and show that diets rich in fats and proteins across the board have lower rates of depression and anxiety. People who diet mainly consists of artificial sweeteners and sugars, 42% higher depression rate. Here's why I share that stat. When somebody feels depressed, I think all of us have had a moment when we felt that way. When you feel depressed, what do you want to eat the most?
Sugar.
Right?
Ice cream.
It's not a steak, right? Now it's a steak for me, but it's not a steak. It's usually some ice cream. It's usually something that is sugar. So this is where we have this net negative effect that's happening where we want it, our body's craving it. But the problem is that it's backwards because it's actually creating a deeper depressional state. Do you see that? We have to start making these changes. Now, what if I told you that the gut bacteria that you have alone can actually change the mental state of a person? And I said, how can we do that? How can I change your gut bacteria and alter the mental state? Happy that you asked. There is a study done, a fecal transplant study. Here's what that means. They took people, I'm going to read this because you're going to love this. I thought this was great. They took people, a group of people who were depressed, and they basically acknowledged that they suffer with depression. And then they had another group of people who said, no, I feel really good. I'm happy. I'm a joyful person. I'm upbeat. And they took poop out of them, which would mimic their microbiome, and they swapped their poop and gave them each other's poop. And what they found over this course of the study was that the people who were depressed became happy. The people who were happy became depressed. By altering the microbiome, by altering the gut bacteria that you have, you can alter somebody's state. So I'm a happy guy. If anyone's sad, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna start selling my poop on the black market. That's what I'm doing. No, but they've also done this from a different place. I'm sorry. This is getting taped. I'm in trouble. They've also done this, and they did this study. So in Canada, they did a study on mice, and what they found was, in a similar but different study, they found that mice that showed behaviors of outgoing, mice who are outgoing or like aggressive or they were like very dominant, when they switched the, again, fecal matter of a mouse that was more submissive, the same thing happened. So aggression or submission, the same thing happened. There's so much tied to our gut with how our bodies are responding. Think about how you respond to your children or to your spouse or to the people around you. Maybe they just have a bad poop. Maybe they have bad gut. So next time someone yells at you, say, you got nasty poop. We got to fix poop. This is the problem. So I know, yeah, nasty poop, mister. So here's the thing. When somebody is stressed or anxious for prolonged periods of time, remember cortisol goes up. When cortisol goes up, we talked about the gut lining becomes weak, aka leaky gut. The next topic is leaky gut. So in the belly bundle, GI repair is one of the ingredients. I'm going to hit on that later, but GI repair is basically one of the main supplements we have that works on healing the lining of your gut. So in the bundle, the reason why that's part of that, it literally heals the lining of your gut with all the different ingredients that it has. But leaky gut is basically like this. So a healthy gut, you have a barrier that protects what's on the inside versus what's floating around on the outside, okay? So you want to keep what's on the inside, what's on the outside. So you have healthy proteins and toxins. We don't want them mixing, correct? Well, when the gut lining gets broken, what happens is that now we start seeing the bad guys, the pathogens floating into the inside and the inside floating to the outside. They should not be mixing. And the problem is that when you have leaky gut, all throughout the lining, you have that happening where there's pass through. Permeability, hyperpermeability is the word you'll see. And that's where things are passing back and forth. So we want to make sure that we're limiting this. So if you've heard that terminology or you've been told you have leaky gut, number one, you want to make sure, I would say this, if you know that you have that or you've been told you have that, I would talk to Dr. Olivia about getting the gut test because there's different layers you want to figure out of how severe is this and how much is passing back and forth that's not good. So there's more specific things, okay? But in general, this is where you see this a lot, and it's stress is one, but another one that's going to happen. Oh, I don't want to get there yet. That's coming. But another one I'll go before I go there. Prolonged. They've done studies on artificial sweeteners and sugar. I'm going to come back to this later. Artificial sweeteners and sugar, that will also start to deteriorate the lining of your gut and create hyperpermeability. So make sure that we're eating less and less of that. Okay. And then this is the one everyone's here for tonight. Colonoscopies. Man, if there was one thing I was most excited for tonight to share, it's this. Who loves every year getting their colonoscopy? No, yes, exactly. I'm going to share with you tonight, it's going to rock your world. When you start looking in, the medical system says we need to get our colonoscopies after the age of 45 roughly, and it's because we want to prevent colon what? Cancer. The moment you use the C word, everyone perks up and we go, if I got to get a camera in my butt once a year to make sure I don't get colon cancer, do what you got to do. However, here's the thing. When you start looking at the numbers, we're doing more harm than good across the board with colonoscopies. Here's what I mean by that. When you look at this, so to save the life of 2 people from getting colon cancer, you have to have 1,000 people do a colonoscopy every year for 10 years. Okay? To save 2 people, 1,000 people have to get a colonoscopy every year for 10 years. Now, during this procedure, this loop that you see that's there, that's the loop that they go when they find polyps, they heat it up and they burn them off. That colon that they're going through is not a big space. So what happens is that during that procedure, more commonly than not, that loop gets hot and either burns your colon or a lot of times burn holes through the colon. And what they found is that so every year, 1,000 colonoscopies that are done, with 1,000 colonoscopies, they will burn entire holes through the digestive tract on at least 5 people. So for every 1,000 people, at least 5 people will get a hole burned through their digestive tract. And then several end up dying. Few will end up hurt from there. So if you do the math on this, Daryl, you're my math guy. Do the math on this. You have to make this work. It says you have for 10 years in a row, 50 people will die to save 2 people. If you do this 10 years in a row, 50 people will die or be injured to save the lives of 2. Do you guys see where the insanity is coming in here? When you start to understand more of the procedure and what happens from the procedure, it starts to make you second guess things. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking to myself, the medical paradigm period is not a preventative scope. So whenever you have somebody who is in a reactive space give preventative advice, I'm always a little bit hesitant to listen. Does that make sense? So when you start looking at that, I think doing a gut test is a much better way to see what your colon looks like and what your GI tract looks like than having that procedure done right there. Much better. Then here's what happens. So with that loop, we're going to go to the polyp. So when you have a polyp there, even when you do the procedure, even when they say, hey, Mr. Smith, we went in there, we found a polyp, it looked not good, we burned that thing off, don't worry. Do you want to know why that's still not a good procedural thing to do? It's basically, you have this polyp here, but the bad part is underneath the root here. When they do that loop and they cut it off at the top, that's like going in your garden, finding the weeds, and then just cutting the weed off at the top, but you never pull the root out. Do you guys see that? So if I'm just doing that, what's going to grow right back? Do you guys see what I'm saying? So if they're just doing this, they go, hey, come back next time, we'll cut your next polyps off. Well, it's because they're never getting to the underlying root of what's happening in the lining of your gut that's making the polyp come out in the first place. Here's why, again, it's still a reactive process that's not good. So ultimately, I'm going to say this to be very clear. I can't tell you to not get colonoscopies, and I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that know the numbers and make a good decision on what you think you should do. I know what I'm not going to be doing, but here's the thing: is just you got to be educated and make decisions based off of the numbers of what's going on here. And there are more efficient and effective ways, I believe, to check the health of your gut lining instead of doing things like this every year. So far, so good. Okay.
Okay,
You are.
it's me. All right, everybody say SIBO. I just think it's fun to say. So SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This is actually what we found when Dr. Mike went through his testing that he had. So this is where you have excessive bacteria growing in your small intestine. So basically your small intestine is the squiggly one that's in the middle, and then your large intestine goes around it. Your small intestine should have less bacteria than your large intestine. What happens with SIBO is there's too much bacteria growing in the small intestine, and this causes a lot of issues. One of the main reasons this happens is slowed down digestion. we talked about earlier. So when you have undigested foods sitting in your digestive tract, this leads to an opportunity for bacteria to grow. And when it grows too close to the stomach, this is where you get SIBO. What SIBO looks like is bloating after eating, abdominal pain, lost my spot here, diarrhea, malabsorption of nutrients, which causes nutritional deficiencies. One of those deficiencies is fats, because a lot of times with this, you can't digest and absorb fats. Well, if you can't absorb fats, guess what else you can't absorb? Fat-soluble vitamins. So vitamins A, D, E, and K all require fat to be absorbed with them, to be absorbed into your body. And so if you can't break down and absorb fats, you're going to be deficient in probably all of those. And we also see vitamin B12 pop up again, because the bacteria in your small intestine use vitamin B12. And so again, you find that getting decreased and that deficiency. And again, those neurological issues, memory issues, confusion, even numbness and tingling in your hands and feet can come from that. So I feel like, raise your hand if you know someone who has SIBO. Yeah, not very many people know that, right? So I guess you could all raise your hand.
I am free
Besides
from
him.
SIBO.
Now raise your hand if you know someone who has IBS. A couple more hands. Okay, so here's my point in that. What they found is 80% of people with IBS have SIBO. And so here's where testing is important, because if you're like, okay, I have someone who has IBS and you're treating that, but you don't realize that the SIBO is the issue and you're not killing off that extra bacteria, you're just stuck in this cycle and we're not actually fixing the problem. So this is where so 2 of our supplements in the Belly Bundle help with this. So the GI Remove is what will kill off that extra bacteria. Your GI Replenish is our spore-based probiotic. Being spore-based allows it to feed into good bacteria without also feeding into that excessive bacteria. And it doesn't have to be bad bacteria in your small intestine. Sometimes it is good bacteria. It's just growing in the wrong places. And so we don't want to feed into the good when it's already overgrown. Okay, Dr. Mike touched on this a little bit already, but who knows what I'm talking about when I say, I just have a gut feeling about this, or I'm just gonna trust your gut on this, right? Or when you get nervous and you feel butterflies in your stomach, right? Like when you see your spouse walk into the room and you get all those butterflies, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's a clear connection, right, between your gut and your brain and your emotions. And again, Dr. Mike touched on this earlier, but the gut-brain axis means the way your gut and your brain are communicating. So the way those are connected is through your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve controls basically everything in your body that you don't think about. Controls your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your digestion, right? So you're not thinking about, hey, can you please digest my food? Like, it's just happening without you thinking about it. That's from your vagus nerve. So your brain communicates with the rest of your body through neurons. These are your nerve cells. So we pass messages along neurons to talk to the rest of the body. Your gut also has neurons. So your brain has about 100 billion neurons. Your gut has about 500 million neurons, which all communicate with the brain through the nervous system. And here's what they found that I think is so crazy. Out of all these signals going back and forth, only 10 to 20% are your brain to your gut. 80 to 90% are gut talking to your brain. So here's why this matters. Dr. Mike talked about depression and anxiety and why that is such a huge thing in our country and in the world right now. And like he was saying, it's less in your head, it's more in your body. And so you can't fix your brain without fixing the gut, and vice versa, right? They play off of each other. They did a study that looked at more than 1.2 million hospitalizations for IBS in 4,000 different hospitals. And what they found was people with IBS had 3 times higher risk of anxiety, 2 times higher risk of depression, and 2 times higher risk of suicide ideation versus the general population. And so where we used to think IBS causes anxiety, what they're actually finding is it's the opposite. And so I just think that's important. And then I didn't read any studies to confirm this, but I just think this makes logical sense. So go with me on this. If you're someone who does trust your gut, right? Like you want to listen to that gut instinct. Well, if you have a bad and unhealthy gut causing an unhealthy and inflamed brain, how can you trust that gut feeling, right? To talk to your brain well, to lead you well through life. So I don't have any scientific studies to confirm that, but something to think about.
Basically, what she's saying is if your partner has a bad gut, you don't trust their judgment. That's what she's saying.
Yes.
So she's saying, I can't, you're not reliable. This is bad, it's not good. All right, top 5 foods that destroy your gut. This is always fun to do because this isn't a surprise to anybody. By the way, when I go through these, you're gonna be like, yes, obviously. But I think you got to understand a little bit more about these because we see it, but we still consume it. Does that make sense? So here's the first one, gluten. Now here's the thing. Believe it or not, I'm not gonna demonize gluten, and here's why. If you think about, because I'm Italian, I love gluten. But here's why. It's because when you think about gluten, it's that I don't believe gluten is the actual enemy. I think because if you look at this, there's a big connection between gluten and leaky gut. But if you think about it, the U.S. has significantly high amounts of leaky gut. We consume a lot of gluten. But guess who else consumes a lot of gluten? Italy, countries in Europe. Guess what they don't have? Leaky gut. What's the problem? If gluten was the problem, they would see an issue there, right? I think one of the bigger problems that we're not seeing is this other G word called glyphosate. Glyphosate is what's sprayed on all of our gluten and our grains, and glyphosate is the bigger problem that I think is creating the hyperpermeability and the issues. So we got to be really, really careful of like what are we buying and the cleanliness of the glyphosate on the things. There are a few brands out there that will actually label themselves like glyphosate free. Find them, use those if you want. You can talk to us after, and there's a couple that I can share, but one of the things that is really important. So when most of you start care, we put the foundation 3 in your hands. Some of you guys are on them. Most of you guys should be on them. Here's one really cool thing to think about when you're on this is that one of the ones, the digestion and detox of the foundation 3, one of the amazing parts about that is that they've done studies to show that people who are taking that, there's something in there called AB22. It's a I'm blanking on the word. It's something. It's
It's a
in like
probiotic
it's a
strain.
form of a probiotic
Yes.
strain. Okay, this AB22 basically shields your gut from glyphosate. So they measured this and they found that people who take this have a significantly less effect to glyphosate because your microbiome is protected. Really cool. That's in your foundation 3. Okay, so from gluten, aka glyphosate, we're going to go down to damaged fats, aka seed oils or rancid fats. This is one that we got to avoid. If you want to have more information on this, this documentary, Fed a Lie, this is unreal. I would go on YouTube and I would watch this documentary. I promise you, you watch this, you will not let another seed oil back into your house again. When we were pretty clean about it in our home, and my wife was like, sunflower oil is like not so bad, like we'll just let that in. And then we watched this, and I was like, get it out, like no more. And you just start to understand that there is so much havoc that seed oils and rancid fats are playing on, again, the inflammation of your gut. It literally creates inflammation of your gut, which again, go down the line, prolonged inflammation leads to leaky gut and other issues of dysbiosis. So take these guys out. Next one, I kind of already hit on this one, but sugar and artificial sweeteners. 2 things I really wanted to say on this though. Number 1, we talked about the gut-brain connection. What we now know is that this was a study done by the Lancet journal. It's a medical journal. What they found was that artificial sweeteners can now break down and bypass the blood-brain barrier and then affect your brain. It can negatively affect your brain. They were finding that people who consume artificial sweeteners, there is a tie to Alzheimer's and dementia because of how that plays an effect on damaging your brain. We got to get rid of artificial sweeteners. This is things like sucralose, aspartame. If you see any of those guys like that in anything in your home, you put it in the garbage. Don't be the person who's, well, let me just finish it because, I don't want to waste it. Waste it. Put it away. Garbage. And it's funny. My this is my own family, by the way. My own family. I go, hey, you got to stop. This is my uncle. I go, you got to stop. You got to stop drinking the Coke Zero. Coke Zero, it says no sugar. It's because there's artificial sweeteners and there's sucralose and aspartame in there. Yeah, you got to cut it out. He's like, but I just can't give it up. I said, what do you love more, Coke Zero or not having Alzheimer's? Like, pick your poison. The reality, I say it in a joke, but the reality is a lot of these things we think about like, hey, the thing that we're consuming, it's not that you have that thing once in a time. He has that thing at least with every meal at night, right? So that over time, like you are creating a monster. It's like you don't need it. There's other things. Speaking of drinks, oh, that's just another study. Sorry, another study I found that backs up artificial sweeteners messing up your gut microbiome, which is again dysbiosis. So studies are finding this thing over and over again. Cut the sugars. Alcohol. I know. Don't shoot the messenger. Here's a fascinating thought. So if any of you guys are familiar with the guy named Andrew Huberman, really big on YouTube. He's a neuroscientist out of Stanford. A lot of really good stuff on YouTube with him. But he did this video. He talked about alcohol and what alcohol does to your gut. So follow me for a second. When you're let's say that we're all out as friends, we're all out going camping. Let's say that I fall and I scrape my leg, I have an open wound. To sterilize this wound, what am I going to put on the wound? Alcohol. You put alcohol because it's going to kill viruses and bacteria. It's going to sterilize it. People who are constantly drinking alcohol, what are you doing to the good bacteria and viruses and pathogens in your gut? You are sterilizing your gut. I never put two and two together like that before, but think about that. No one drinks alcohol and says, my gut feels great now. This never happens. We know that there's a direct effect of what you're drinking and how it's affecting your gut and how it's affecting the environment between these guys, okay? So gotta get rid of that. And then if you're drinking the sugary ones, go back to sugar. What's that doing? And what we know with beer specifically is that it converts into sugar, which makes the gut hyperpermeable. So again, alcohol has to go. Conventional meats. If you've seen studies that show like, hey, if you eat red meat, you're going to get heart disease, right? If you eat red meat, you're going to get cancer. These studies, what they're not telling you, these studies are done on conventional meat, not pasture-raised meat. They're not done on like grass-raised meat. They're done on conventional cows. Here's the difference. If you eat conventional meat, I agree with those studies. You're probably going to end up with that stuff because when you're eating any meat, remember that you are eating whatever that animal ate. Whatever that animal ate, it consumed, it's a part of it, you are going to be consuming that. So if that cow was given vaccines, antibiotics, hormones, all bunch of garbage to keep it healthy, we'll say, you are now consuming that in your steak. You guys see that? This is the reason why when someone says, well, I just don't want to spend the extra $5 for that steak because this steak is cheaper. I said this to my family the other day. And I'm gonna say it to you guys. The less you spend on your food now, the more you're gonna spend later trying to fix your health. You're gonna spend the money at some point. Invest in the good stuff now so you're not forced to pay the money later because of the diagnosis that you have from the bad meats. I say that lovingly because I see it in my own family and it's hard, but again, we gotta pay the extra couple dollars to put the good foods in your body to feed and nourish this temple well, right? Okay, that wraps up those. Now, what should you put in your gut?
Okay, so what should you eat to help support a healthy gut? A couple of things we're going to touch on tonight. First, bone broth. Bone broth is like a superfood. It's super nutrient dense, it's very healing to the gut. And if you think about bone broth, when you go back to when we were more of hunter-gatherer society, right? We used the whole animal. Nothing went to waste. Now, what do? We just use the specific cuts of meat that we like and everything else gets thrown away. But the bones and the cartilage and the ligaments, all of that is very nutrient dense and has a lot of healing properties. And so bone broth is when you literally put all of those wasted pieces back in and you cook it for a long time and all of those nutrients get into the broth and then you drink it. And because of the collagen and the gelatin specifically, it's very healing to the gut lining. So when Dr. Mike's talking about leaky gut, these are ingredients that are very healing to that lining and calms down that inflammation, brings those junctions back together. So you can either make your own, it's pretty easy, or you can buy it. So we have a company that we partner with here specifically called Broth Bar. They're a husband and wife, they're local, located out of here. They make all of their broths homemade. They don't have a storefront anymore, but they're available in, I think, every butcher
They're
basically in
almost
the
everywhere
area. And if you guys have been to George and Gather, it's also in their little coffee market too. So super good. I get that whenever I'm sick. And then prebiotic and probiotic rich foods. So this would be things like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir. Basically from this, you want to always try to get your nutrients from food and then supplement to fill in the gaps. So you want to eat as many of your probiotics as you can and your prebiotics, and then use the supplements to fill in those gaps. Speaking of supplements, so I want to show you guys a little bit of what to look for when you are looking at supplements and how to know if something is a good probiotic supplement. So this is a kid's probiotic, and anytime we're looking at ingredient labels, I always say don't look at the front, look at the back, because the front they make it all pretty, right? It's organic, it's non-GMO, it has all the, verified and all that, all the pretty stuff that you want to see. But then we look here. So when you're looking at a supplement, you should never see calories from sugar in a vitamin. Dr. Mike just talked about how bad sugar is for our gut. So why would we put sugar in something that's supposed to be good for our gut, right? And then you look here, there's only one type of bacteria in this probiotic. There's only 2.5 billion units. I know that sounds like a lot, but for a probiotic, that's not enough. And then you look at the other ingredients and you see there's the cane sugar and then your sunflower oil, which again, he just talked about how seed oils are bad for our gut. So we can't fall for the pretty marketing.
Don't trust Mary Ruth. Just not trust.
This is our kids' probiotic. So here's what I like about our kids' probiotic. If you look over here, first of all, there's no calories because there's no sugar. And then if you look here, there's 11 different types of bacteria and 10 billion units in this. And then down here, there's no weird ingredients. It's flavored with monk fruit and natural berry flavor. So kids love this stuff and you don't have to give them the sugar to make them take it.
My kids think that that's like when we say candy, that's what they think candy is. They don't know anything about what we ate as kids. They think that that's their candy. For just like they're like, hey, can I have a treat? I'm like, go out. You can have a probiotic. Go ahead. And they're like, woo! They're gonna have no friends and they're gonna. This is so bad. All right, so we're gonna go through the 4 R's of gut healing. So basically, this is. I went swimming with Dr. Olivia this weekend. This is her pool. This is.
That's mean.
So here's my analogy. Most of us, we talk about having a dysfunctional gut. Most of us, this is what your gut looks like. It is dirty. It's not good. A lot of bad things in there. But when we don't have a good gut, before coming to something like tonight, we'd say, oh, if I need to have a healthier gut, I'll go to Target and I'll get a probiotic and then I'll be okay. That would be similar to like saying, hey, that's your pool. Just throw a chlorine tablet in there. You should be okay. Not going to do the job. If this was your pool, the first thing we need to do is what? Remove all of that stuff out. And then we need to repair the walls because it's all nasty. Got to repair the lining of that pool again. And then you repopulate it with good things and replenish the pool with good, right? Keep that in mind. Those 4 R's are the things that we're going to do for your gut. So first step is what? Say remove. Oh my God. Don't worry, we're almost done, I promise. Remove. So here's the thing. You cannot, I always say this, do not detox if you're going to retox. Meaning, if you're going to do a gut cleansing or you're going to be working on your gut, you have to stop putting the bad things in. So the first step is removing the sugar, the oils, the grains, the toxins. Did anybody catch that? The vegetables. Here's why I put vegetables. If you are someone who has SIBO, vegetables will inflame your gut more than help. So again, that was my problem. So the reality is like if you're someone who eats vegetables and you feel really bloated, this isn't for everybody, but if you feel bloated and worse when you eat vegetables, you need to take them out for a season until we can heal what's wrong with your gut and why can't you have them, okay? But this GI Remove, this is literally going to do that. It's going to remove all the toxins out of your gut. It's going to remove all the parasites. It's going to kill the bad guys. This is the first step in the process, is the remove. After the remove, then we repair. So like Dr. Olivia mentioned, bone broth and collagen, these are really good. The protein, here's what I love. The protein powder we have is bone broth protein. It's a double whammy. This is why that's the protein powder I recommend for people to use. This supplement here, one of the main ingredients is L-glutamine, which is very nourishing and healing for your gut, along with a bunch of other pieces of things. So this is going to be in the repair phase. If you do the belly bundle, this is a part of the repair phase of healing the lining. Quickly, I'm going to go to two other things. Fasting and chiropractic adjustments, how those are a part of the repair phase. So when you fast, this is important. Different hours of fasting yield different forms of results, okay? When you fast, specifically the 24-hour mark of fasting is what I want to highlight. And I'm going to show a video to highlight what actually happens at the 24-hour mark of fasting.
Study that came out of MIT that showed 24 hours without food and your intestinal stem cells inside your gut actually start to reboot themselves. Now, a stem cell is a cell that can go to anywhere in the body and repair itself. But at 24 hours, you get a plethora of them in your gut. And in the gut, we've got a damaged microbiome from everything that we've just been talking about. So what I discovered in this 24-hour fast is I could take women that have been on birth control pill for years, people that have been on multiple rounds of antibiotics, people who had been eating horrible food, and I could actually put them through a 24-hour fast once a week, and these stem cells would come in there and they would start to repair. And so now if I teach that person how to eat right, their food is actually starting to build a better microbiome in the gut. So that 24-hour fast became this go-to in my clinic where I could take all these gut challenges and I could start to unwind them just because I knew the body had this capability of making these intestinal. Study that came out of MIT.
The power of just not putting things in and letting your body go to work. 24-hour fast is so fascinating. When I was preparing for this workshop a month ago, I started doing a 24-hour fast once a week. And it was fascinating to see even what I noticed going through this process. So if you end up getting the bundle tonight, the belly bundle, come find me and I'll tell you, I've done the 24-hour fast different ways. I'll tell you the best way to do it because I love to eat, so it's hard. 24 hours is hard for me, but I'll tell you the best way to go about it. And I would encourage you to do the 24-hour fast once a week for the 2 months that you're on the bundle, okay? The carnivore diet was another piece, like she was saying, I was going to mention earlier. This is why this is so good. If you do the carnivore diet for a season of time, why this is so helpful is when you put red meat in, it's so high in zinc that zinc is very healing to your gut. But also when you have a large amount of zinc specifically, you get an increase of something called T regulatory cells, which is basically this. If your immune system is overactivated, aka autoimmune conditions, if your immune system is overactivated, you start doing this, the T regulatory cells calms it back down. So people who are on autoimmune conditions, they've done these studies, and where is it? Right here. So Harvard did one. Harvard did a study on the carnivore diet, and they said for 6 months, they had 2,000 people in this study. They were on the carnivore diet for 6 months. Here's what they found. 69% improved chronic disease, 91% improved hunger cravings, 85% improved mental clarity, 89% improved energy, 93% resolved hypertension, 98% resolved insulin resistance, aka type 2 diabetes, and 100% of people who had to inject themselves with metformin stopped. This is pretty fascinating. So when you start looking at the benefit of moving towards this for a season, I don't personally, I don't think that this is something you should do forever, but I think for a season, there's a lot of gut benefits to what can happen when you implement this in. And then with the chiropractic care, here's what's really cool. Like Dr. Livy was saying, going back to gut-brain connection, when you get a chiropractic adjustment, here's what's happening. The vagus nerve more effectively communicates all the way down to your gut. And this is why those of you guys who have babies that come in constipated and they get adjusted, all of a sudden they poop before they leave the office. Like this is what happens, that the nervous system comes on. There is obviously a very specific connection between getting adjusted and your gut. You saw little Asher in the beginning, getting chiropractic care, his digestive system is starting to function better. Those of you guys at your 1 month progress eval, we always ask like, hey, how are things going? Most people say, I just feel like things are flowing a little easier. And again, so there is a very big connection between getting the parasympathetic nervous system turned on so that everything can relax and calm down a little bit more, okay? Replace, this is the other P, the other R in the bundle. And the replace is the digestive enzymes that she was mentioning already. So she already kind of touched on this, but it has the stomach acid, all of the different enzymes to help you break down your proteins and fats and things like that. This is also something that's really, really, really helpful. And then the replenish is the adult probiotic. So she talked about the kids probiotic. This is our adult probiotic. So again, once you've removed everything out, we've cleaned out the walls of your lining. You're taking the enzymes to help your body break down the food so that it's easier now coming in. What the replenish does is this is now refilling the pool with good, clean water. This is like repopulating your gut with good, clean, healthy bacteria to then start fresh. Now, I put kefir on here because just real quick for people to know, the difference between yogurt and kefir. Yogurt is promoted as a probiotic. Yogurt will feed whatever healthy bacteria you currently have in your gut. Kefir can colonize new bacteria in your gut. So if you're someone who, again, needs to, as we're rebuilding, adding kefir in can actually regrow healthy new strands of bacteria and repopulate in a good way. So I say add kefir in. Okay, so for your bundle, 5 different supplements you're gonna take. Tonight, like I said, 20% off. If you're someone who said, as you were going through tonight and you're resonating, said, hey, I feel like the belly bundle is the thing that I need to just kind of start slow, and you wanna do that, 20% off. Tonight it's 306. And with this, you're gonna get, again, all 5 of these. In your bundle, you're gonna get a form that we've laid out for you that's gonna teach you and show you exactly what supplement to take at exactly what time. So you know, month 1, we're gonna remove, and you're gonna do your microbiome support. On month 2, now it's our repair and replenish phase. So it's a 2-month protocol. Again, I would say this. If you're somebody who is like, hey, I just want to start a little bit slower, but I need to do something. This is where I would start. I would do this first. And then as you do this, I would implement that 24-hour fast once a week. And again, if you end up getting this tonight, come to me and I'll help you with knowing how to implement and how to do this together. Cool? And then last but not least.
Okay. Our gut test. So most of you, like he was saying, the belly bundle will be what you need. This is your good reset, and that's all the support you need. But some of you came here tonight because you've been dealing with some digestive issues for a long time, or maybe you didn't realize that your digestive issues were so bad until we started going through this, and you're like, man, I resonate with a lot of this. So if that's you, the testing would be a good next step. So just like when you come in for chiropractic, we x-ray your spine to figure out where exactly are the root causes of the symptoms you're experiencing. If you have digestive symptoms, it makes sense that we would do testing to essentially x-ray your gut and see exactly where are those root causes of those symptoms. So what we're able to test for in this is we test for your digestion, we test for inflammation, dysbiosis, we test for pathogens and parasites. So I'm going to go through exactly what we're testing for as we go through the test. So first, we test for your dysbiosis. And is this something that is because of inflammation in your gut, or is this because of overgrowth, or is it both? So you want to be in zone 1. If you've moved into zone 2, this means that we now have an opportunity for pathogens and infections to develop. When we're in zone 3, we have pathogens and infection present. When you're in zone 4, this is a full-blown disease process like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, or cancer. Zone 4 is obviously very serious. And then, so we test for digestion and absorption. So here we're testing for how are you breaking down and absorbing your food? How are you breaking down fats? Do you have the pancreatic enzymes that you need to support that digestive process? And then here we test for inflammation and immunology. So this marker right here, calprotectin, this marker, if this is high, that indicates that disease process. So if this is high enough, this can indicate where there might be the presence of cancer. So like where Dr. Mike was talking about, your colonoscopy might not be the best screening. This is actually a great screening to see, is there a potential disease process going on here? And from here, we might say, you know what? You do need to go get this checked out, but then you at least know there's a reason to be getting it checked out. This eosinophil protein X tests for histamine responses. So like if you're allergic to bees and you continually get stung by bees, what's going to happen? You're going to continually have this immune response overreacting, causing autoimmune issues, right? So the same way, if you're continually eating foods that are causing allergic reactions or sensitivities, this would be high, and so we'd need to look at, okay, what foods are you sensitive to? What do we need to remove there? And then this fecal secretory IgA, this is your leaky gut marker. So if this is high, you have leaky gut, and then we'll be able to use the repair to repair that lining. We check your microbiome to see which specific strains of bacteria are too high, which are too low, and we're able to bring those into balance by, like I mentioned with the probiotic, we can feed into those deficiencies without feeding into the ones that are too high, and we're able to bring those down, doing that remove like he was talking about. And then we test for pathogens and parasites. So is there anything there that should not be there? So here, there's a few different things that we culture and we can see these are good. This person has a couple that are in the potential pathogen zone. So we'd want to go ahead and kill those off before they move into the full-blown pathogen zone, causing issues there. And then this is your parasites. We can see, is there any presence of parasites? And then what's really, really cool is Genova, who does our lab testing for us, they take those things, so anything that's in outside of the green, that's in that potential pathogen or full-blown pathogen, they test it against what will actually kill it. And then they provide us a list of, okay, here are all of the things that will actually kill these pathogens. And so then we're able to use that to build your protocol to make sure we're actually getting rid of the problem. So tonight only, this test is 20% off. So usually it's $743. Tonight it's going to be $595. So if you're not sure if this is a good fit for you, come talk to me. We can set up a phone consult and go through any questions or concerns you have, because this is about a 4 to 6 month process depending on your results. So if you want to make sure this is a good fit before you make that investment, talk to me and we can talk about that. If you're someone you know this is something you need to do, go ahead and take advantage of this tonight. We probably won't put this on sale again the rest of the year. So definitely make sure you take advantage tonight.
In the beginning, we talked about action steps. Don't be a silly Sally and come here with no action steps. So reality is this. Again, if you know the belly bundle is what you want to do and start slow, I would get your belly bundle. And again, we'll walk you through this 2 months. If you're someone like you said, you're like, hey, enough's enough, I'm going to figure this thing out, grab the GI test, talk with Dr. Olivia. If we put a phone consult, because some of you guys might be like, hey, I don't even know where I'm sitting. Schedule a call with her and then sit with her and be like, hey, here's what I'm experiencing. Which one should I go with? And I would say that's a good place to start. Maybe you're someone who's like, hey, I just need to implement fasting first, or bone broth, or maybe you're like, I need some more protein, bone broth protein, because I'm not even doing that. What I would say is like, do something leaving here to make sure that our gut is healthy, because you can see how many layers this thing plays into. So do something as you leave here tonight to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Does that make sense? Okay. 1, 2, 3, run and go get your stuff. Just kidding. All right. Thanks, guys.